The galaxy had labeled humans as the soft species, too emotional, too trusting, too weak to survive among the stars. They were wrong about the weakness part, but what they didn't understand was that our so-called softness would become our greatest weapon against an enemy that fed on fear itself. It all started when I found a dying alien child on my doorstep, barely the size of a house cat, with wolf-like features and eyes that held the weight of 1,000 lost worlds. The Galactic Council said helping her was illegal. The Dominion Empire said keeping her was treason. My government said harboring her was suicide. I said they could all go to hell. Little did I know that this small act of human compassion would spark the greatest rebellion the galaxy had ever seen, and that the tiny Wolfgirl sleeping at my door would become the key to humanity's rise from galactic joke to the most feared species in known space. Because sometimes the universe doesn't need another warrior race. Sometimes it needs someone foolish enough to care. Marcus Chun had always been a creature of routine. Every morning at exactly 0600 hours, he would step outside his small habitat dome on mining station Kepler 442b to check the atmosphere processors. The ritual had become as natural as breathing during his 3 years of solitary duty on this forgotten rock at the edge of human space. But this morning was different. This morning, there was something small and furry curled up against his door. At first, Marcus thought it might be some kind of local fauna that had somehow survived the terraforming process. The creature was roughly the size of a house cat, covered in silver-gray fur that seemed to shimmer in the pale light of the twin suns. But as he knelt down for a closer look, his breath caught in his throat. The creature had distinctly humanoid features mixed with what appeared to be canine characteristics. Small, pointed ears twitched atop its head, and a delicate snout protruded from an otherwise human-like face. Most shocking of all were its eyes, large, intelligent, and undeniably sapient. Even in unconsciousness, they held a depth that spoke of complex thought and emotion. Marcus had seen enough alien species during his mandatory service in the Terran Diplomatic Corps to recognize sentient life when he saw it. This wasn't some random animal. This was a child. The creature stirred as he examined it, revealing small fangs and making soft whimpering sounds that tugged at something deep in Marcus's chest. Its breathing was labored, and he could see what appeared to be burns along its tiny arms and legs. Without hesitation, he scooped the small being into his arms and carried it inside. The Habitat Dome's medical scanner immediately began cataloging the creature's vitals as Marcus placed it on the examination table. The results were both fascinating and alarming. The being's physiology was a remarkable hybrid, mammalian with enhanced neural pathways that suggested high intelligence, but also showing signs of severe malnutrition and what the scanner identified as energy weapon damage. As Marcus worked to treat the creature's wounds, his mind raced with questions. How had it gotten here? Kepler 442b was weeks away from the nearest inhabited system, and his supply runs weren't scheduled for another 2 months. The mining station's sensors would have detected any approaching vessels, yet somehow this small being had appeared on his doorstep without triggering a single alarm. The creature's eyes fluttered open as Marcus finished applying medical gel to its burns. For a moment, they stared at each other in mutual bewilderment. Then, the small being tried to scramble away, only to collapse as its injured leg gave out beneath it. "Easy there, little one," Marcus said softly, his voice taking on the same tone he'd once used to calm frightened animals back on Earth. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature's ears flattened against its head, and it bared its small fangs in what was clearly meant to be a threatening display. The effect was somewhat diminished by the fact that it was roughly the size of a human infant and barely able to stand. Marcus slowly reached for the universal translator he kept for emergencies. The device was standard issue for all human outposts, designed to interface with the communication methods of known alien species. But when he activated it and pointed it toward the creature, the results were confusing. Static filled the air, punctuated by fragments of what sounded like desperate pleas in a dozen different languages. The translator's display flickered rapidly through various linguistic databases before finally settling on something resembling Galactic Standard. Please, no more. They're coming, have to hide. The words sent a chill down Marcus's spine. He deactivated the translator and set it aside, choosing instead to rely on the universal language of gentle actions. Slowly, he offered the creature a portion of his breakfast, a simple protein bar that the medical scanner had indicated would be safe for its metabolism. The small being eyed the food suspiciously before its hunger overcame its caution. It snatched the protein bar and devoured it with startling efficiency, then looked up at Marcus with what could only be described as hopeful expectation. More? Marcus asked, reaching for another bar. The creature's ears perked up at his tone, and, for the first time since awakening, its posture relaxed slightly. As it ate, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Branded into the fur on the creature's left shoulder was a symbol he recognized from his diplomatic training, the mark of the Dominion Empire. The Dominion was humanity's most dangerous neighbor, a militaristic coalition of reptilian species that viewed all mammalian life as inferior. They were known for their brutal treatment of conquered species, often using them as slave labor or worse. If this creature had escaped from Dominion custody, then its presence here put both of them in tremendous danger. As if summoned by his thoughts, the habitat's long-range communication array suddenly crackled to life. Marcus froze as an authoritative voice filled the dome, speaking in the harsh, sibilant tones of Dominion Standard. Attention, Human Mining Facility Designation K. 442-7. This is Dominion Battlecruiser Vengeance. We are conducting a search and recovery operation for escaped property. Prepare for immediate inspection. The creature let out a soft whimper and pressed itself against Marcus's leg, trembling with obvious terror. Its small hands clutched at his uniform with surprising strength, and those intelligent eyes looked up at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a protective instinct he hadn't experienced since losing his family in the colony wars. Without conscious thought, he found himself making a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Computer, activate privacy mode," he commanded. The dome's windows immediately darkened, and the communication array went into standby. He then gathered the small creature into his arms and headed for the emergency shelter built into the dome's foundation. The shelter was designed to protect against asteroid impacts and solar flares, but its lead-lined walls would also block most scanning equipment. As he sealed them inside, Marcus realized he was committing what the Galactic Council would certainly classify as a Class A violation of interspecies law. The Dominion had legal rights to their property, regardless of whether that property was sentient or not. By harboring an escaped slave, Marcus was essentially declaring war on one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. But as he looked down at the small, frightened creature in his arms, Marcus found that he didn't care about the legal implications. He joined a diplomatic corps because he believed in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The fact that this particular being happened to be alien didn't change that fundamental principle. "What's your name?" he asked softly, though he didn't expect an answer. The creature looked up at him with those remarkable eyes and made a series of soft sounds that might have been an attempt at speech. Marcus activated the translator again, adjusting its sensitivity settings. "Kira," came the whispered translation. "My name, Kira." "Well, Kira," Marcus said, settling down beside her as the sounds of approaching ships grew louder overhead. "Looks like we're in this together now." Outside, he could hear the distinctive whine of Dominion landing craft touching down around the mining station. Heavy footsteps echoed across the dome's outer hull as search teams began their systematic inspection of the facility. Marcus held Kira closer as she trembled against him, her small body radiating terror. The Dominion soldiers were thorough, but not particularly imaginative. They scanned the main living areas, checked the mining equipment, and even investigated the waste disposal systems. But they never thought to look for a hidden shelter designed to withstand asteroid impacts. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, the sounds of their search began to fade. Property not located at this facility, came the eventual report. Proceeding to next search grid, Marcus waited until the ship's engines had faded completely before emerging from the shelter. Kira remained close to his side, her small hand clutching his sleeve as they returned to the main living area. The Dominion's search had been invasive, but not destructive. They'd clearly been under orders to minimize damage to human property. As night fell over the mining station, Marcus found himself facing a problem he'd never anticipated. He couldn't simply return Kira to her people because he didn't know who her people were. The Universal Translator suggested she spoke multiple languages, which implied either extensive education or frequent contact with various species. Neither scenario fit with what he knew about Dominion slavery practices. More pressing was the question of what to do next. The Dominion would certainly return when they failed to find their missing property elsewhere. And even if they didn't, Marcus couldn't keep a sentient being hidden in emergency shelter indefinitely. But as he watched Kira carefully exploring the habitat dome, her curiosity gradually overcoming her fear, Marcus realized something important. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't alone. And judging by the way she stayed close to him, always keeping him in sight, Kira felt the same way. That night, as Kira curled up on a makeshift bed Marcus had prepared for her, she spoke again through the translator. "Why?" she asked, her voice small and confused. "Why help Kira?" "Humans. Dominion says humans weak. Soft. Why human risk for small Wolfgirl?" Marcus considered the question seriously. The honest answer was complicated, involving his own losses and his fundamental beliefs about right and wrong. But looking at this small, brave creature who had somehow survived whatever horrors the Dominion had put her through, he found himself giving a simpler truth. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said, "and because I think you're a lot stronger than anyone gives you credit for." Kira's ears perked up at this, and for the first time since he'd found her, she smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it lit up her entire face and made Marcus's heart clench with protective determination. Outside, the twin suns set over the barren landscape of Kepler, 442b, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Inside the habitat dome, a human mining engineer and a small alien refugee began building something the galaxy had never seen before. A partnership that would challenge everything the major powers thought they knew about strength, courage, and the true nature of humanity. As Marcus settled down for the night, he couldn't have known that their small act of rebellion would eventually grow into something much larger. He couldn't have predicted that the scared little wolf girl sleeping peacefully beside him would become one of the most important figures in galactic history. All he knew was that for the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first discovered Kira on his doorstep, and in that time, their unlikely partnership had evolved into something neither of them had expected. What began as simple shelter and medical care had grown into genuine companionship, marked by small moments of trust and understanding that bridged the gap between their species. Kira had proven to be remarkably adaptable and incredibly intelligent. Within days, she had learned to navigate the habitat dome's basic systems, and her grasp of human language was improving at an astonishing rate. The Universal Translator was still necessary for complex conversations, but simple exchanges could now happen in Marcus's native English, spoken in Kira's soft, melodic voice with its slight accent that reminded him of wind through pine forests. More impressive still was her intuitive understanding of the mining station's operations. Marcus had initially tried to keep her away from the heavy machinery and dangerous areas, but Kira's curiosity and surprising technical aptitude soon made her an invaluable assistant. Her small size allowed her to access maintenance areas that would have been difficult for Marcus to reach, and her enhanced senses could detect equipment malfunctions before they became serious problems. It was during one of these maintenance sessions that Marcus first truly understood what humanity was up against in the larger galaxy. They were working together to repair a faulty atmosphere processor, Kira's small hands deftly adjusting internal components, while Marcus monitored the system diagnostics. The work was routine, almost meditative, when Kira suddenly stopped and looked up at him with those expressive eyes. "Marcus," she said carefully, using his name for the first time since arriving. Kira must tell truth about Dominion, about why they want Kira back. Marcus set down his tools and gave her his full attention. Over the past weeks, Kira had shared fragments of her past, enough for him to understand that she had escaped from some kind of Dominion facility, but she had always grown agitated when pressed for details. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share," Marcus said gently. "But I'm here to listen if you want to talk." Kira nodded slowly, then began to speak in a mixture of English and her native language, the translator filling in the gaps. "Kira's people called the Lyralii. We come from a world with many forests, many pack families. Lyralii very good at understanding. We feel emotions of others, sometimes see thoughts. Make us good healers, good peacemakers." She paused, her ears drooping as darker memories surfaced. "Dominion came to our world 50 cycles ago. They say they bring peace, protection, but they really come because they learn about Lyralii gifts. They want to use us." Marcus felt his jaw clench, but he remained silent, letting her continue at her own pace. "They take young Lyralii from families, put us in place they call enhancement facilities. They try to make our gifts stronger, more useful for them. They hurt us to make emotions stronger. Fear, pain, despair. They say strong emotions make abilities better." The atmosphere processor beeped softly in the background, indicating the repair was complete, but neither of them moved to acknowledge it. Marcus found his hands clenched into fists as the full horror of what Kira was describing sank in. "They use us to read minds of enemies," Kira continued, her voice growing smaller. "To know if people tell truth during interrogation. To find hidden thoughts and feelings. Dominion very good at making people afraid, but Lyralii abilities make them better at it." "How did you escape?" Marcus asked quietly. Kira's small face hardened with a determination that seemed too mature for her apparent age. "Facility on Kira's world had experiment. They try to enhance abilities by connecting many Lyralii minds together. Create network of empaths. But they make mistake. When minds connect, we share more than just abilities. We share memories, experiences, knowledge." Her eyes met his directly, and Marcus saw a depth of intelligence there that went far beyond what any child should possess. Kira learned many things in network. Learn about other species Dominion conquer. Learn about humans and why Dominion fear you, even though they call you weak. Learn about resistance movements across galaxy. And Kira learned truth about enhancement facilities. What truth? Facilities not just for making abilities stronger. They for making weapons. Dominion want to use enhanced Lyralii as psychic spies, assassins, interrogators. Turn empaths into tools of war and oppression. But networks show us another path. Kira stood up, moving to the dome's main window where the barren landscape of Kepler 442b stretched toward the horizon. When minds connected, eldest Lyralii in network share something with us. She show us vision of possible future. Future where Lyralii work with species that understand compassion, cooperation. Species that could help us save our people and stop Dominion expansion. Marcus joined her at the window, beginning to understand where this conversation was heading. "Let me guess," he said. "That species was humanity." Kira nodded. "Elders show us human history, human nature. Show us species that fight wars to protect others, not just themselves. Species that risk everything for strangers, for principles, for idea that all sentient life deserve freedom." She turned to face him fully, and Marcus was struck by the intensity of her gaze. "Dominion call humans weak because you feel too much, care too much. But elders show us truth. Humans strong because of feelings, not despite them. When humans decide something worth fighting for, they become most dangerous species in galaxy." Marcus felt a strange mix of pride and responsibility settling on his shoulders. He thought of Earth's history, of all the times humans had indeed risen up against seemingly impossible odds when their principles were at stake. But he also thought of humanity's current position in galactic politics, isolated, outnumbered, and generally dismissed by the major powers. "I'm honored by your elders' faith in us," Marcus said carefully. "But you should know that humanity isn't exactly in a position to challenge the Dominion right now. We're barely maintaining our own colonies, let alone launching rescue missions." Kira's expression didn't change. If anything, her conviction seemed to grow stronger. "Elder know this too. That why escape plan carefully. That why Kira come to you. I don't understand." Kira moved to Marcus's personal computer terminal and began accessing files with practiced ease. Marcus watched in amazement as she navigated through systems he hadn't even known she was aware of. "Kira, not just random refugee," she explained as she worked. "Kira, chosen for mission. Kira, carry information from network. Information about Dominion weaknesses, about other enslaved species, about resistance groups across galaxy. Information that could help humans understand their true position in galaxy." The computer screen filled with data as Kira transferred files from some hidden partition in her memory to the station systems. Star charts, species profiles, military assessments, economic analyses, a treasure trove of intelligence that represented decades of careful observation and planning. "This is incredible," Marcus breathed as he scanned the information. "But why me? I'm just a mining engineer on a backwater station." "Because," Kira said simply, "you first human to show Kira kindness without expecting anything in return. Because you risk everything for stranger. Because you prove Elder's vision correct." As Marcus delved deeper into the files, the scope of what Kira had brought him became clear. The Dominion wasn't just a regional power. It was a galactic cancer, systematically conquering and enslaving species across dozens of sectors. But, more importantly, the files revealed something the galactic community didn't know. The Dominion was overextended, struggling to maintain control over their vast territories through fear and brutality alone. More intriguing still were the references to other species and resistance movements. The galaxy wasn't as unified under Dominion rule as their propaganda suggested. There were dozens of groups fighting back, waiting for someone to coordinate their efforts and provide them with hope. "The network's plan," Marcus said as understanding dawned. "They want humanity to become the rallying point for galactic resistance." Kira nodded. "Humans have something other species lost. Hope, stubbornness, refusal to accept that strong must always defeat weak. Dominion understand this. That's why they try to isolate humans, make galaxy think you weak and irrelevant." Over the following days, Marcus found himself studying the intelligence Kira had provided with growing fascination and determination. The picture that emerged was both daunting and inspiring. Yes, the Dominion was powerful, but they were also vulnerable in ways they didn't want anyone to know. Their military relied heavily on fear and intimidation rather than actual superiority. Their economy was built on slave labor from conquered species, making them dependent on constant expansion to maintain their lifestyle. Most importantly, their control over subjugated populations was maintained through careful manipulation of information and the systematic elimination of hope. But Marcus also learned about himself and his species in new ways. Through Kira's translated memories of the network's collective knowledge, he saw humanity as other species saw them. The image was both humbling and inspiring. To most galactic powers, humans were an anomaly. They were one of the few species that regularly risked their lives for abstract principles rather than immediate gain. They formed emotional attachments across species lines. They refused to abandon their values, even when doing so would be more practical. These traits made them unpredictable and therefore dangerous to powers like the Dominion, who relied on others behaving in predictable, self-interested ways. "The network believes," Kira explained one evening as they watched the twin suns set, "that humans could teach galaxy new way of thinking about strength and weakness. that humans could show others that cooperation's stronger than domination, that compassion more powerful than fear. Marcus looked down at his small companion, still amazed by the trust she had placed in him. In just a few weeks, she had gone from a terrified refugee to a confident partner, and he realized that their relationship itself was proof of the network's theory. Despite every difference between them, species, size, background, experience, they had found common ground in shared values and mutual respect. "So what happens now?" he asked. "I mean, this information is incredibly valuable, but I'm not exactly connected to human command structure anymore. I'm just a guy on a mining station." Kira smiled, and Marcus was struck again by how much she had changed since that first frightening morning. "Now we prove network right," she said. "We show Galaxy what humans really capable of when they have reason to fight." That night, as Marcus prepared for sleep, he found himself thinking about the path that lay ahead. The information Kira had brought wasn't just intelligence. It was a roadmap for liberation, not just for her people, but for dozens of species across the galaxy. But it would require something humanity had never attempted before, stepping out of their comfortable isolation and taking on the role of galactic liberators. It would mean risking everything they had built for the sake of strangers they had never met. As he drifted off to sleep, Marcus heard Kira's soft breathing from her bed nearby, steady and peaceful in a way it hadn't been when she first arrived. The small alien who had appeared at his door had become more than just a refugee in need of shelter. She had become a partner, a teacher, and a symbol of everything humanity could achieve if they chose to embrace their true nature. Tomorrow, Marcus decided he would begin reaching out to his old contacts in the diplomatic corps. It was time to see if the rest of humanity was ready to discover what they were really capable of when they decided to care about something bigger than themselves. The galaxy was about to learn that humans weren't weak because they felt too much. They were dangerous because of it. Marcus's first contact with the outside world came 6 weeks after finding Kira, when he finally worked up the courage to reach out to his former colleague, Dr. Sarah Vasquez, now serving as a xenobiologist on the Terran diplomatic station orbiting Proxima Centauri. The encrypted communication took 3 days to reach her, and another 3 for her response to arrive. When it did, her message was both excited and concerned. "Marcus, what you're describing sounds incredible, but also incredibly dangerous. If even half of what your friend has shared is accurate, we're talking about intelligence that could reshape humanity's entire approach to galactic politics. I'm forwarding your preliminary data to Director Hassan, but I have to warn you, this is going to attract attention from some very powerful people, both human and alien." Sarah's warning proved prophetic. Within a week of her transmission, Marcus received a priority communication from Terran Command requesting his immediate return to Earth for debriefing. The message was politely worded, but its underlying meaning was clear. This wasn't really a request. "They want me to leave you," Marcus explained to Kira as they reviewed the message together. "Standard protocol would be to turn you over to Alien Affairs and submit to individual interrogation." Kira's ears flattened against her head, but her voice remained steady. "Kira, understand. This bigger than just Marcus and Kira now. If humans to help Galaxy, they need information. Need to know threat is real." But Marcus had been thinking about this possibility ever since sending his first message to Sarah. What if there was another way? What if we could give them the information they need without separating us? Over the next several days, Marcus and Kira worked together to develop a plan that neither Terran Command nor the Dominion would expect. Using the mining station's industrial fabrication equipment, they began constructing something unprecedented, a mobile communication array that could interface directly with Kira's enhanced empathic abilities. The technology was a hybrid of human engineering and Lyralii biological understanding. Kira's memories from the network included detailed knowledge of how her people's abilities actually worked on a neurological level, while Marcus's background in systems integration allowed him to design technology that could amplify and focus those abilities. "If this works," Marcus explained as they calibrated the final components, will be able to create a real-time empathic link between you and human command. They'll be able to verify everything you tell them by actually feeling the truth of it themselves. It was a radical concept. Humans had always relied on technology and logical analysis for gathering intelligence. The idea of using empathic connection for strategic planning was completely foreign to their military doctrine. But if successful, it would provide an undeniable foundation of trust that no amount of traditional interrogation could match. Their first test of a system came when Sarah Vasquez arrived aboard a fast courier ship, accompanied by Director Hassan himself and a small team of specialists. Marcus had expected high-level interest, but the director's personal involvement indicated just how seriously Terran Command was taking Kira's intelligence. Hassan was a tall, imposing man with the kind of calm authority that came from decades of navigating complex interspecies negotiations. He studied Kira with intense curiosity as Marcus explained their communication system, but his expression remained diplomatically neutral. "Mr. Chun," Hassan said finally, "what you're proposing represents a fundamental shift in how we gather and verify intelligence. We're talking about allowing an alien entity direct access to human consciousness, even in a limited capacity. The security implications alone." "With respect, Director," Marcus interrupted, "the security implications of not understanding what we're up against are far worse. The Dominion isn't just another regional power. According to the intelligence Kira has provided, they're preparing for total galactic domination, and humanity is specifically targeted for subjugation or elimination." Hassan turned to Kira, addressing her directly for the first time. "And you're claiming that your people's network sent you specifically to humanity for help." Kira stepped forward, her small stature making her seem even more vulnerable next to the imposing director. But when she spoke, her voice carried a confidence that commanded attention. "Lyralii network see many possible futures," she said through the translator, though her English had improved enough that the device was barely necessary. "Most futures show galaxy conquered by Dominion, all free species enslaved or destroyed. But in some futures, humans discover their true strength and lead rebellion that frees galaxy. And what is this true strength you speak of?" Kira gestured toward the communication array. "Only way to explain is to show. Director Hassan willing to experience network memory? To feel truth of Kira's words rather than just hear them." Hassan exchanged glances with his team, clearly weighing the risks. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, but we'll start with minimal contact and specific safeguards." The first connection lasted only 30 seconds, but its impact on Hassan was immediate and profound. Through the empathic link, he experienced a fragment of the network's collective memory. The fall of the Lyralii homeworld, the horror of the enhancement facilities, and, most importantly, the desperate hope that had driven the network to reach out to humanity. When the connection ended, Hassan staggered slightly, his composed demeanor shaken by the raw, emotional truth of what he had experienced. "My God," he whispered, "how many species has the Dominion done this to?" 47 confirmed conquests in last century," Kira replied. "Hundreds more under varying degrees of control. Network estimate over 3 billion sentient beings currently enslaved." Over the following week, Hassan and his team conducted extensive sessions with both Marcus and Kira, using the empathic array to verify and expand upon the intelligence she had brought. Each connection revealed new layers of the Dominion's operations and the scope of suffering they had inflicted across the galaxy. But, more importantly, the sessions revealed something about humanity that even Hassan hadn't fully understood. Through Kira's empathic perception, they experienced how other species viewed humans, not as the weak, overly emotional species the Dominion claimed, but as something far more dangerous, a species that could not be broken by fear because they possess something stronger than fear. "The network calls it compassionate fury," Kira explained during one session. "Human capacity to become absolutely ruthless when fighting to protect others. Other species fight for territory, resources, dominance. Humans fight for ideas, for strangers, for principles. This makes humans unpredictable and, therefore, dangerous to empires built on fear. Dr. Vasquez, who had been monitoring the neurological data from each session, made a discovery that would prove crucial to everything that followed. "Director," she said during their final briefing, "I think we need to understand that Kira isn't just sharing intelligence. She's actually been unconsciously mapping human emotional and psychological responses through these empathic connections. And what she's discovered is that humans are naturally resistant to the kind of psychological warfare the Dominion relies on." "What do you mean?" Hassan asked. "The Dominion's conquest model depends on breaking the will to resist. They use fear, despair, and isolation to pacify conquered populations. But humans respond to those tactics by becoming more determined, not less. We literally become stronger when we're fighting for something we believe in." Kia nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, this Y network believe humans can teach Galaxy new way of resistance. When humans fight, others see that hope not lost. When humans refuse to surrender, others remember they can fight too." It was during this conversation that Director Hassan made the decision that would change the course of galactic history. "We're going to need a ship," he said quietly. "And not just any ship. We're going to need something that can get us deep into Dominion space without being detected." Marcus looked up sharply. "Us, sir." Hassan smiled grimly. "Mr. Chun, did you really think we were going to leave you and Kira out of this? You've become the galaxy's first human-alien empathic communication team. And according to everything we've learned, you're also our best hope for making contact with the resistance networks Kira has identified." Over the next month, preparations began for what Terran Command was calling Operation Starlight, an unprecedented mission to make contact with resistance movements across Dominion space and begin coordinating a galaxy-wide rebellion. The ship they chose was the TCS Prometheus, an experimental stealth vessel originally designed for deep space reconnaissance. Its advanced cloaking systems and minimal crew requirements made it perfect for infiltrating enemy territory, while its sophisticated communication arrays could support the empathic network technology Marcus and Kira had developed. But as departure preparations intensified, Marcus began to understand the true scope of what they were attempting. This wasn't just a rescue mission for the Lyralii or even a standard military operation. They were trying to spark a revolution that would span dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. "Are you sure about this?" he asked Kira one evening as they watched the Prometheus undergo final modifications in the orbital shipyard. "Once we leave, there's no going back. We'll be committing humanity to a war that could last decades." Kira's expression was serious, but her resolve was unwavering. Network show Kira many possible futures in Final Connection. In futures where humans do nothing, Dominion eventually conquer Earth too. Human isolation, not protection, it just delay inevitable. She moved closer to the observation window, her small hand pressed against the reinforced glass. But in futures where humans fight, where humans show Galaxy what compassionate fury looks like, those futures bright with hope. Not just for Lyralii, but for all free species. Marcus joined her at the window, looking out at the sleek form of the ship that would carry them into the unknown. "When you first showed up at my door, I thought I was just helping one small refugee. I had no idea I was signing up to help liberate the galaxy." Kira smiled up at him, and Marcus was struck once again by how much she had changed since that first morning. The frightened, wounded child had grown into a confident, determined young being who seemed to carry the hopes of countless worlds on her small shoulders. "Marcus not sign up for anything," she said softly. "Marcus just do what humans do. See someone who need help and decide to help. Rest follow naturally." As they prepared to depart Kepler 442b for the last time, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a lonely mining engineer counting down the days until his tour ended. Now, he was part of something that could reshape the political structure of the entire galaxy. But looking at Kira as she efficiently checked their equipment one final time, Marcus realized that the most important change wasn't in his circumstances. It was in his understanding of what humanity was capable of when they decided to care about something bigger than themselves. The Dominion had made a fundamental miscalculation when they dismissed humans as weak and irrelevant. They had failed to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their absolute refusal to abandon hope, even in the face of impossible odds. And now that refusal was about to become contagious across the galaxy. The TCS Prometheus slipped through hyperspace like a ghost, its advanced stealth systems rendering it invisible to all but the most sophisticated scanning equipment. In the 3 months since leaving Earth, the small crew had made contact with no fewer than 12 different resistance movements across Dominion space, each connection facilitated by Kira's empathic abilities and the intelligence she had carried from the Lyralii network. But their current mission was different. Instead of simply gathering intelligence or making diplomatic contact, they were heading directly into the heart of Dominion territory to attempt something that had never been tried before: a coordinated, simultaneous uprising across multiple enslaved worlds. Marcus stood in the ship's command center, studying tactical displays that showed the positions of resistance cells across 17 different systems. Each blinking icon represented thousands of beings who had chosen hope over despair, freedom over safety. It was both inspiring and terrifying to realize how much depended on the success of their next few hours. Empathic network is stable across all connections, reported Lieutenant Commander Zhang, the ship's communications officer. We're receiving confirmation signals from all primary nodes. Beside him, Kira sat in the specially designed interface chair that allowed her to simultaneously maintain empathic contact with resistance leaders across multiple worlds. The strain of coordinating so many connections was enormous, but she bore it with the same quiet determination that had impressed Marcus from their first meeting. Kira sensed readiness from all groups, she said, her voice slightly distant as part of her consciousness remained linked to the network. They wait for signal. But Kira also sensed fear. Many species never attempt coordinated resistance before. They need to feel human confidence to overcome doubt. Director Hassan, who had insisted on personally commanding this mission, nodded grimly. That's exactly what we're here to provide. Mr. Chun, are you ready? Marcus took a deep breath and moved to his own interface station. Over the months of working with the empathic network, he had discovered something unexpected about himself. His emotional responses could be amplified and transmitted through Kira's abilities, allowing him to share human determination and courage directly with alien minds. It was a strange sensation, opening his thoughts and feelings to beings he had never met in person. But as the connection established and his consciousness touched the minds of resistance leaders across the galaxy, Marcus felt a surge of recognition and shared purpose that transcended species barriers. Through the link, he experienced the hopes and fears of dozens of different beings. A crystalline hive mother who had hidden her young from Dominion slave raids for 20 years. A Theronian engineer who had spent decades sabotaging Dominion military equipment from within their own factories. A group of ethereal philosophers who had maintained underground schools to preserve their culture despite Dominion attempts to erase it. Each story was different, but all shared a common thread: the desperate desire for freedom and the courage to risk everything for the chance to reclaim it. My friends, Marcus spoke through the network, his words translated into dozens of languages and emotional contexts by Kira's abilities. Today we prove that the Dominion's greatest weapon, fear, has no power over those who choose to stand together. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Through the empathic link, Marcus felt waves of determination, hope, and fierce joy washing back from the connected minds. These beings had been isolated, told that resistance was futile, that they were alone in their suffering. But now they could feel the solidarity of others, the unbreakable resolve that came from knowing they were part of something larger than themselves. Dominion forces report no unusual activity, Lieutenant Zhang announced. Their monitoring stations are detecting normal communications traffic across all target systems. It was a testament to the sophistication of their plan. Instead of using traditional radio or quantum communications that could be intercepted, the Resistance was coordinating through pure empathic connection, something the Dominion's technology couldn't detect because they had never believed such large-scale psychic networking was possible. Beginning Phase 1 operations, Hassan announced. Across 17 worlds, the first strikes began simultaneously. Dominion military installations found their primary systems disabled by saboteurs who had been working within their facilities for years. Communication arrays went dark as Resistance fighters emerged from hidden bases to claim control of strategic locations. Most importantly, the psychological warfare broadcasts that the Dominion used to maintain fear and compliance were replaced by messages of hope and unity transmitted through both technological and empathic means. Marcus watched the tactical displays update in real time as reports flooded in through the network. The Resistance movements had been planning these operations for months, waiting only for the coordination and emotional support that the Human-Lyralii partnership could provide. Theronian Prime reports all major spaceports under Resistance control, Jean called out. Crystalline colonies have successfully evacuated their young to protected underground facilities. Ethereal Command confirms destruction of 3 Dominion indoctrination centers. But even as the initial reports brought celebration, Marcus knew the real test was yet to come. The Dominion's response would be swift and brutal. Everything depended on whether the Resistance movements could maintain their coordination and resolve when the Empire struck back. "Kira," he said through the network, "can you feel how the network is holding up?" Her response came layered with complex emotional harmonies that conveyed far more than words alone could express. Network strong. All groups maintain connection. But Kira sensed something else. Something Resistance leaders not expect. What is it? Through the empathic link, Marcus suddenly felt a new presence joining the network. Not one of their planned contacts, but something vast and ancient and filled with barely contained fury. "Enhancement Facility Omega 7 coming online," Kira whispered, her voice tight with strain. "Dominion activate emergency protocol. They wake the collective." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Through their months of intelligence gathering, they had learned about the Dominion's most closely guarded secret. A network of enhanced psychics from various species, their abilities artificially amplified, and their minds programmed to serve as living weapons of psychological warfare. The collective represented the Dominion's answer to the kind of empathic coordination the Resistance was using. Dozens of broken, enslaved telepaths linked together into a single instrument of terror, capable of broadcasting fear and despair across entire star systems. "They're trying to break the network," Marcus realized. "If they can flood our empathic links with enough terror, they can shatter the Resistance's coordination." Through the connection, he could feel the collective's influence beginning to spread, waves of paralyzing fear designed to convince every Resistance fighter that their cause was hopeless, that surrender was the only rational choice. But as Marcus felt the psychic assault intensify, something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking under the pressure, the Resistance network began to fight back. It started with the Lyralii refugees who had escaped other enhancement facilities, beings like Kira who had experienced the Dominion's conditioning and rejected it. Their natural empathic abilities, enhanced by genuine emotion rather than artificial amplification, began to counter the collective's broadcasts. Then, the human members of the network, Marcus, and the growing number of Terran personnel who had learned to interface with the empathic system, added their own contribution. Not telepathic ability, but something the Dominion had never encountered in their psychological warfare: absolute refusal to accept defeat. "Push back," Marcus called through the network. "Show them what real strength looks like." What followed was a battle unlike anything in galactic history. It wasn't fought with ships or weapons, but with competing visions of reality transmitted directly from mind to mind across hundreds of light years. The collective broadcast images of futility and despair, enslaved populations accepting their fate, resistance fighters abandoned by their allies, the inevitable triumph of order over chaos. These were visions designed to break the will to fight, refined through decades of psychological experimentation. But the Resistance Network responded with something the collective couldn't understand or counter: genuine hope backed by unshakable determination. Through Marcus's human perspective, resistance fighters across the galaxy experienced something they had never felt before: the absolute conviction that some things were worth any sacrifice, that freedom was worth fighting for regardless of the odds. More importantly, they felt the emotional truth of human history: the knowledge that every tyrant eventually fell, that every empire eventually crumbled, that the desire for freedom was stronger than any force that sought to suppress it. Network holding, Kira reported, though Marcus could see the strain was enormous. Collective cannot break connection. They not understand how resistance maintain hope when facing certain defeat. Through the empathic link, Marcus sensed confusion and growing panic from the enhancement facility. The collective had been designed to break enemy morale through psychological warfare, but their programming couldn't process opponents who became stronger when facing impossible odds. Director Zhang called out urgently, "We're receiving reports from across Dominion space. Multiple collective facilities are experiencing what they're calling cascading empathic feedback. Their enhanced psychics are being overwhelmed by the emotional intensity of the Resistance Network." Hassan's expression was grim but determined. The Dominion built their psychic weapons by breaking and enslaving natural empaths. They never considered what would happen when those weapons encountered empaths who chose their abilities freely. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galactic balance of power shifted forever. The empathic feedback that had begun in the collective facilities spread through the Dominion's psychic control network, carrying with it the unbreakable hope and determination of the Resistance. Across dozens of worlds, enslaved telepaths who had been programmed to serve the Empire suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. Enhancement facilities that had operated for decades found their subjects breaking free of psychological conditioning that had seemed absolute. Most significantly, the Dominion military forces found themselves facing something they had no protocol for: an enemy that grew stronger the more pressure was applied to it. Phase 2 operations commencing, Hassan announced as new reports flooded in. All resistance groups report successful completion of primary objectives. We're receiving requests for immediate evacuation support from 17 liberated enhancement facilities. Marcus felt a surge of fierce pride through the network as he realized what they had accomplished. What had begun as a simple mining engineer helping a lost refugee had grown into the largest slave liberation operation in galactic history. But even as he celebrated their success, Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would not accept this challenge to their authority quietly. The real war was just starting. Through the empathic link, he felt Kira's exhaustion, but also her unwavering determination. The small Iralii, who had appeared at his door 8 months ago, had become the focal point for a revolutionary movement that spanned dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. "What happens now?" he asked through the network. The response came not just from Kira, but from the collective voice of free beings across the galaxy. "Now we show the universe what happens when hope becomes contagious." As the TCS Prometheus prepared to begin evacuation operations, Marcus looked out at the stars and realized that humanity had finally found its true place in the galactic community. Not as the weak, emotional species the Dominion claimed, but as the catalyst that could inspire others to remember their own strength. The galaxy was about to learn that some forces were stronger than fear, and the strongest of all was the simple decision to care about something bigger than yourself. 2 years after the Great Liberation, as historians would later call it, the galaxy looked nothing like the Dominion Empire's carefully ordered domain. What had begun as coordinated resistance strikes had evolved into something far more profound: a complete transformation of how civilizations related to each other across the stars. Marcus stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, humanity's new diplomatic headquarters orbiting the liberated world of Sanctuary Prime. Through the reinforced transparent steel, he could see ships from dozens of species docking at the massive station's ports. Former slaves and resistance fighters now working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly cooperative interstellar civilization. The Theronian delegation has arrived, Director Hassan announced as he joined Marcus at the viewing port. That makes 43 species confirmed for the Constitutional Convention. Not bad for a galaxy that was supposedly under unified Imperial control just 24 months ago. Marcus smiled, though his expression carried the weight of everything they had experienced since that first desperate escape from Dominion space. Any word from the Crystalline Hive fleets? Their bioships would be a significant addition to the Defense Coalition. Kira is meeting with their Queen Mother now, Hassan replied. If anyone can convince them to join the Alliance formally, it's her. The thought of Kira brought a familiar mix of pride and amazement to Marcus's mind. The small refugee who had once hidden in his emergency shelter had become one of the most influential beings in the galaxy. Her unique position as the last free member of the original Lyralii network, combined with her deep empathic bond with humanity, made her an irreplaceable bridge between species that might otherwise have struggled to trust each other. More importantly, her partnership with Marcus had evolved into something that was revolutionizing interspecies communication across the Alliance. The empathic technological hybrid system they had pioneered was now being adapted for use by dozens of different species combinations, creating networks of understanding that made the old Dominion propaganda campaigns not just ineffective, but laughable. Director, Lieutenant Zhang's voice came through the station's communication system. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. Admiral Reeves reports multiple Dominion battle groups massing near the Zirian Nebula. Looks like they're preparing for another major offensive. Hassan's expression hardened. Despite the liberation of nearly 100 worlds and the collapse of the collective network, the Dominion Empire was far from defeated. The core worlds of their empire, populated by the reptilian species that had founded it, remained firmly under Imperial control, and their military, while no longer supported by psychic warfare capabilities, was still one of the most formidable fighting forces in the galaxy. How many ships? Marcus asked as they headed toward the station's command center. Preliminary scans indicate at least 300 vessels, Zhang reported. The Sanctuary defense grid is fully operational, and we have confirmation that the Lyralii refugee fleets are moving to support positions. Marcus felt a familiar tightening in his chest as he studied the tactical display. The numbers weren't encouraging. Even with all their technological advances and improved coordination, the Alliance was still outnumbered and outgunned by the core Dominion forces. But as he watched the display update with new arrivals, resistance ships emerging from hyperspace, refugee fleets changing course to join the defense, even previously neutral species declaring their intention to stand with the Alliance, Marcus realized that the numbers told only part of the story. Incoming transmission from the lead Dominion vessel, Zhang announced. They're requesting to speak with Alliance leadership. Hassan nodded. Put them through. The main display shimmered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Dominion Fleet Admiral Thaxos, one of the few high-ranking officers who had survived the chaos of the last 2 years. His reptilian features were set in an expression of cold authority that had once terrified entire star systems. Alliance leadership, Thaxos spoke in the harsh tones of Dominion standard. You have 48 hours to surrender the stolen enhancement facility subjects and return to your designated territorial boundaries. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your illegal settlements. Hassan's response was calm, but firm. Admiral Thaxos, the beings you refer to as subjects, are free citizens of the Galactic Alliance. They will not be returned to slavery under any circumstances. As for our territorial boundaries, we recognize only the right of all sentient beings to determine their own fate. Thaxos's expression darkened. Your human arrogance will be the death of countless innocent beings. We offer order, stability, protection. You offer only chaos and the inevitable collapse that follows when inferior species attempt to govern themselves. It was Marcus who responded, stepping forward so that the Dominion Admiral could see him clearly. Admiral, you're making the same mistake the Dominion has always made. You assume that strength comes from domination, that order requires oppression. But in the last 2 years, we've proven something you can't understand. Free beings working together are stronger than slaves working under fear. Bold words from the human who harbors a stolen, enhanced asset. Thaxos replied. Where's the Lyralii subject? Still hiding behind your protection? Before Marcus could respond, a new voice joined the conversation. Soft, melodic, but carrying an authority that seemed to fill the entire command center. Kira, not hiding, Admiral Thaxos. Kira, right here. Kira stepped into view of the communication array, and Marcus was struck once again by how much she had changed since that first morning on Kepler 442b. No longer the frightened refugee seeking shelter. She now carried herself with the confidence of someone who had become a symbol of hope for billions of beings across the galaxy. But more than her bearing, it was her size that would have shocked anyone who remembered her as a small, cat-sized creature. The empathic network connections, combined with proper nutrition and medical care, had allowed her to grow to her species' full adult size, roughly equivalent to a human teenager, but with the presence and wisdom of someone far older. And Kira bring message from all free Lyralii, from all liberated enhancement facility survivors, from every being who choose freedom over fear. As she spoke, something remarkable began happening on the display. Other figures stepped into view behind Kira, representatives of dozens of species, many bearing the physical and psychological scars of Dominion oppression, but all standing with unmistakable dignity and determination. Dominion promise order through fear, Kira continued. But Kira see different kind of order. Order that come from choice, from cooperation, from decision to protect each other rather than dominate each other. Admiral Thaxos's composure began to crack as he realized what he was seeing. These weren't the broken, compliant subjects the Dominion had expected to reclaim. They were free beings who had chosen to stand together against the empire that had once enslaved them. This is impossible, he snarled. Enhanced subjects cannot resist programming. The psychological conditioning is absolute. Was absolute, Kira corrected gently. Until Kira learned from humans that some things stronger than conditioning. Some things worth any risk, any sacrifice. Some things make breaking chains not just possible, but inevitable. Through the command center, Marcus could feel the emotional resonance of Kira's words through their empathic link. But more than that, he could sense something else, a growing awareness among the Dominion forces themselves. Director, Commander Vex called out urgently. We're detecting massive defections in the enemy fleet. Individual ships are breaking formation and requesting permission to join Alliance forces. On the display, Admiral Thaxos's expression shifted from anger to confusion to something approaching panic as his own fleet began to disintegrate around him. Ship after ship powered down weapons and began transmitting surrender codes. This is treason, he roared. All vessels returned to formation immediately. But his commands fell on deaf ears. Through the empathic network that now connected Alliance forces across the galaxy, the message of the liberated enhancement facility survivors was spreading to every mind capable of receiving it. The promise that freedom was not only possible, but achievable for any being brave enough to choose it. Admiral, Hassan said quietly, your crews are making the same choice that billions of others have made over the past 2 years. They're choosing hope over fear, freedom over security, cooperation over domination. You can continue fighting a war you've already lost, or you can join us in building something better. For a long moment, the command center was silent except for the steady stream of defection reports from the Dominion fleet. When Admiral Thaxos finally spoke again, his voice carried a weariness that seemed to encompass centuries of military service. What guarantee do we have that the Alliance will honor surrender terms? that our people will not be subjected to the same treatment we inflicted on others. It was Kira who answered, her voice carrying the accumulated wisdom of the Lyralii network and the unshakable moral certainty she had learned from her partnership with humanity. Same guarantee any free being have. Right to choose own path. Make own mistakes. Find own way to happiness. Alliance not perfect, Admiral Thaxos, but alliance built on idea that all sentient life deserve chance to grow, to learn, to become better than what they were. The final surrender came not with a dramatic battle or desperate last stand, but with Admiral Thaxos slowly lowering his head and speaking the words that would officially end the Dominion Empire as a galactic power. All Dominion vessels stand down. Prepare for Alliance boarding and integration procedures. In the months that followed, the galaxy witnessed transformations that would have seemed impossible just 3 years earlier. The former Dominion homeworlds, instead of being conquered and occupied, were welcomed into the Alliance as equal partners in building a new form of interstellar civilization. Enhancement facilities were converted into rehabilitation centers where former slaves could heal from their trauma and learn to use their abilities for their own purposes. The vast military-industrial complexes that had supported the Empire were retooled to produce the infrastructure needed for peaceful cooperation between species. Most remarkably, the Alliance discovered that the diversity of perspectives and abilities brought by formerly enslaved species actually made them stronger and more innovative than any homogeneous empire could be. Theronian engineering combined with human creativity and Lyralii empathic coordination produced technological advances that revolutionized everything from faster-than-light travel to agricultural systems. Marcus found himself serving as humanity's first ambassador to the Empathic Council, working closely with Kira and representatives from other telepathic species to develop new forms of interspecies communication and conflict resolution. It was challenging work, requiring skills he had never imagined needing when he was a simple mining engineer. But as he stood once again on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ships from across the galaxy arrive for the First Galactic Alliance Constitutional Convention, Marcus realized that the most important qualification for his current role wasn't diplomatic training or technical expertise. It was the same quality that had led him to help a small, frightened refugee on a distant mining station 3 years earlier. The simple human conviction that some things were worth doing regardless of the personal cost. Hard to believe it all started with me finding you on my doorstep, he said to Kira as she joined him at the viewing port. She smiled up at him with the same expression that had first convinced him she was worth saving. Marcus still not understand. Kira not just found at Marcus's door. Kira meant to be there. Networks see many possible futures. Choose path that lead to best outcome for all. You mean this was all planned? Not planned exactly. Networks see possibilities, make choices to increase chance of good outcomes. But outcome depend on individuals making right choices when moment come. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the diverse fleet of ships surrounding the station. Networks see that Marcus Chun exactly right kind of human to help small refugee. But Network not know if Marcus Chun actually make that choice when time come. Marcus considered this, thinking about all the moments over the past 3 years when he could have chosen differently. When he could have turned Kira over to authorities, or kept silent about the intelligence she carried, or played it safe instead of risking everything for beings he had never met. What would have happened if I had made different choices? Kira's expression grew serious. Many bad futures possible. Dominion Empire continue growing until even Earth conquered. Alliance never form. Enhanced beings never freed. Galaxy remained divided by fear instead of united by hope. But also, she continued, her smile returning, Network always believe Marcus make right choice. Because humans always do when choice really matter. That why Network choose humans as partners. Not because humans strongest or smartest or most advanced. Because humans most reliable when doing right thing matter more than doing safe thing. As they watched the Constitutional Convention delegates arriving from across the galaxy, Marcus reflected on how completely his understanding of humanity's place in the universe had changed. 3 years ago, humans had been considered a minor species on the periphery of galactic civilization, too emotional and unpredictable to be taken seriously by the major powers. Now they were recognized as the species that had sparked the greatest liberation movement in galactic history, not through superior technology or military might, but through their stubborn refusal to accept that oppression was inevitable. So what happens next? Marcus asked. The Dominion is dissolved, the slaves are free, the Alliance is forming. What does the network see in our future now? Kira's eyes took on the distant look that Marcus had learned indicated she was accessing the deeper levels of empathic connection that linked her to free Lyralii across the galaxy. Networks see many new possibilities now, she said finally. Some challenging, some wonderful, all requiring choice between fear and hope, between safety and growth, between protecting what we have and reaching for something better. She turned to face him directly, and Marcus saw in her eyes the same trust and determination that had first convinced him to risk everything for a stranger. But Network also see that as long as humans remember why they choose to help small refugee who appear at their door, Galaxy will continue growing toward light instead of darkness. As the first session of the Galactic Alliance Constitutional Convention began, with representatives from nearly 200 species working together to establish principles of cooperation and mutual respect, Marcus realized that the most important lesson of the past 3 years wasn't about politics or military strategy or even interspecies relations. It was about the power of individual choice to change the course of history. One person's decision to help someone in need had sparked a revolution that liberated billions of beings and transformed the entire galaxy. It was a reminder that no act of kindness was too small to matter, and no individual was too insignificant to change the world. Standing beside Kira as delegates from across the galaxy worked together to build a better future, Marcus understood that humanity had finally found its true purpose among the stars, not to conquer or dominate, but to inspire others to remember that freedom and compassion were choices that any being could make, regardless of their circumstances. The galaxy had learned that humans weren't weak because they cared too much. They were dangerous because they refused to stop caring, no matter how much safer it would have been to look the other way. And in a universe where cynicism and self-interest had ruled for millennia, that refusal to abandon hope had proven to be the most powerful force imaginable. The small alien Wolfgirl who had slept at Marcus's door had indeed changed everything, not through power or technology, but by giving one human the chance to prove that compassion was stronger than fear, and that sometimes the right choice was also the brave choice. The galaxy would never be the same.